Alright, you clicked on this video because you're thinking of buying a JDM or Japanese sports car, but since you're just starting out in your Japanese tuner journey, you don't know where to start. I'm not gonna bore you with a long intro, so here are some of the best JDM cars for beginners. But before we start, I just want you to know that I'll be mentioning JDM and non-JDM Japanese cars, just because some JDM variants are a little hard to come by. And the first one on this list is none other than the Miata. The Mazda Miata is great for beginners, simply because it is very easy to drive. Just get yourself a manual variant and drive it for a few hours and you'll be downshifting like crazy in no time. It's not the fastest car in the world, but that's what makes this car so great. You can pretty much have fun on the roads without getting into too much trouble. This is also a great choice if you're thinking about going to track days, because a lot of people actually use this car as their track weapon. Not even for the track, they can even be made into drift cars as well. The aftermarket support for this car is also huge, meaning you can modify it however you want. Want to bag it? You can. Want it as a show car? You can. Want to use it as a daily? You can. So there's no need to worry about parts. Also, this car has a huge community behind it, so if you need help working on your Miata, just go into the forums and even Facebook pages dedicated to Miatas, and there will be people willing to share their knowledge with you. Now, the best thing about Miatas is that used examples can be yours for virtually nothing, since it's one of the most cheapest Japanese roadsters you can get. Now, the NA Miatas are slightly going up in value because of the bro tax and the fact that it's the most popular one, but the next generation NB Miata is also something you should consider. Again, I don't want to get into too much detail about the specs because there are plenty of Civics to go around. It's just up to you to decide which one you want. This is probably, if not the most popular tuner car of all time. A big factor of that is because they're just cheap in general, easy to drive, easy to maintain, and can potentially make a lot of power if you wanted to. It's also the car that gets ruined by racers because they're just so accessible, but hopefully you're not gonna be one yourself. That's right, I'm looking at you, so if you're gonna modify your car, make sure you do it right. Anyway, people have made a lot of power with their Civics with just a few modifications and the right tune. And the fact that they're so light makes this car more desirable. If you want to get into track days later on into your journey as a car enthusiast, you'll be glad to know that the Civic is one of the best handling front-wheel drive cars ever. But you won't be drifting in one of these unless you convert it to rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And for parts, well, tuning companies like Spoon, Mugen, and so on actually make great aftermarket parts for this car, so you're not gonna worry about performance parts. And just like the Miata, this car has a huge community behind it, so asking for advice about what you can do to your Civic wouldn't be a hassle. Alright, this is probably gonna be the most modern and probably gonna be the most expensive car on this list. But don't let that worry you, since the new GR86 is coming out, this car will no doubt depreciate even more. But that's a good thing for us car enthusiasts. That means there will be thousands of 86s and BRZs in the used market for you to choose from. This car is a really good stepping stone into the sports car game because of its light chassis, and it isn't that powerful, unlike other sports cars that will literally kill you if you are an inexperienced sports car driver. Although it is no doubt severely underpowered, the GT86 is not really about the speed, it's about the sharp handling, the characteristics of it, and how it makes you feel while driving it. You will smile as you take corners, no doubt about it. Another great thing about this is that its engine is very balanced because it is a Subaru Boxer engine. It gives the GT86 nearly a 50-50 weight distribution, which means more fun while driving. And what about if you want to make more power? If you decide that it's time to make this car go faster, people have slapped turbos on these things, and if you decide to go down that route, you will just have to keep in mind that certain parts in the car will wear down faster. The Toyota MR2 Spider. Now I know what you're thinking. Why not the second generation SW20 MR2? They're awesome cars, no doubt about that, but there is a reason why I recommend the MR2 Spider instead of the SW20. And it has something to do with the infamous snap oversteer. Pre-1993 second generation MR2s are actually the ones that are prone to snap oversteer. It would literally catch even the most experienced drivers out there off guard if they're not careful. So it isn't really a beginner friendly car in my opinion, but with models after 1993, Toyota did fix this issue by upgrading a few parts, but since this video is intended for beginner car enthusiasts that are just starting out and are not that experienced to drive mid-engine cars, then it's just safer to get the MR2 Spider. I know it's not as popular as the SW20, but this car might surprise you with how well it handles and how much fun you can have while driving it. It's just a well-planted car and perfect for those who want to try out a mid-engine layout sports car. It doesn't have the famous turbo 3S GTE engine. Instead, you get the slightly tamed 1.8 litre 1ZZ FED. It's more of an economy motor, but you'll be surprised by how high it revs. This is probably the most underrated car in this list, but just because it's underrated doesn't mean you should underestimate it. Toyota Celica GTS. Again, a very underrated Japanese sports car, but being underrated usually means it's affordable. Well, this is certainly more affordable than its older brother, the GT4 Celica. The value on those are just going up over time. That's why it's a good thing that cars like these exist. Now, the reason why this is not as wanted as the previous generation Celica is that the Toyota Celica GTS just made less power than the previous generation Celica. Successors of sports cars are meant to be better than its predecessors, but in this case it wasn't. But that shouldn't put you off the Celica GTS. You still get a VVTi 1.8 litre engine. VVTi is basically Toyota's version of Honda's VTEC. It's still a great car in my opinion. And I know that a lot of you may not agree with me, but I actually think that it's a pretty good looking car. I mean, the previous Celica's design is just timeless, but the Celica GTS looks good too in its own way. And it's more modern as well. And even if it's underrated, there is still an aftermarket support for this thing. It's also a great daily driver and they can last a very long time. The Celica GTS has been known to last between 250,000 to 300,000 miles if you don't abuse it. My friend had one and it is so reliable, trust me. So it's safe to say that the Celica GTS might be for you if you're looking for a daily sports car that's stylish and can last a very long time. The Honda Jazz or Fit, depending on where you are in the world, is the only economy hatchback in this entry. I know you've heard of this car because they're pretty common. I mean, your neighbor could be driving one as well. You see them everywhere, and they're usually associated with older people who drive them. But you'll be shocked by how perfect this little econo hatchback can be. You'll be experiencing Honda's famous reliability. It's great on gas mileage and it's spacious even if it's small. It's perfect for going out and taking your friends and family out for a drive. That's just the normal grocery getter side of the Honda Jazz. In terms of owning one as a car enthusiast, the Honda Jazz has a massive following much like the Civic. And because it's a pretty common car, spare parts are literally everywhere, as well as aftermarket. I know it looks boring at first, but if you think of it as a blank canvas where you can make it your own, the vast network of aftermarket support for the Jazz can turn it into a pretty little tuner car. You'll also be surprised by how well this car does on the track. A lot of enthusiasts actually take this car on the track and slay because of how light it is. It's also nimble, so that just adds to how awesome this car is at taking corners. So you should think about this car if you're looking for a convenient daily driver that you can modify at the same time and has great gas mileage. These are just some of the best Japanese or JDM cars you can buy as a beginner car enthusiast. If this video has helped you in any way, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I know there are more cars out there, but do post them in the comment section below so we'll be helping each other out. After all, that's what the car community is all about. With that being said, I'll see you on the next video.